to deliver value to your customers and donors through the effective brand and communication strategy. And before the break, Derek and I sat down and we talked about crisis management and communication, but we also talked about how having a strong brand to really support you through that crisis communication strategy is important. And so I'm very looking forward, I'm very interested to kind of hear what we're going to hear now. I will introduce to you Kate Torrance, who is the Vice President, Head of Brand, Content and Communication from Sick Kids Foundation. And is Kieran here as well?
Kieran is sick today.
Kieran is not here today, so it's going to be a 1-2 punch, moderated by, which is okay, you're going to do double duty, which is going to be moderated by Mark Harrison, who is the CEO of Tribe CX. Please welcome them to the stage.
You can't practice 21st century medicine in a 1949 building.
Last 5 minutes in my islands. I started last time looking down at 5 friends. I started out with like 20, I'm to my size 10s. Started out with a penny gunning for 5 cents. This ain't a cry group, tell the entire truth and let it set you free, be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Started out with the Henny and then the push came. Last time I freaked out and ain't been high since. I'm on the fence, shorty tryna send her rinse, but how I'm gon' get caught when I don't even got brakes? I'm rolling. You would think my whip was stolen. In my past life, I picked all that cotton in your clothing.
The Kids Versus campaign, it has gone viral.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
The Kids Versus campaign has been huge.
Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable. Be undeniable.
Well, that's quite an introduction. So I am delighted to be joined by a rock star today. And in a minute, Kate will have the opportunity to introduce herself. But we're going to take you on a journey this afternoon. And you're going to get to explore what it takes to actually bring a brand to life. And when you bring a brand to life, the impact that that can really have for, in this case, donor experience, but also the patient experience that's there around it. So I have the privilege of being the chief exec of Tribe CX, and we work with businesses all across the globe. But I'm a little sort of lost for words at this moment because I think what I've just witnessed and just seen is outstanding. And so I'm intrigued, to hear a bit more about that, and hopefully you are as well. But without further ado, Kate, maybe you'd like to say hello to everyone out there.
Thank you, Mark. I'm blushing. Kate Torrance. I've been with Sick Kids Foundation for almost 10 years. Prior to that, my background was actually working at a number of top-tier advertising agencies in the city on a variety of clients. Government clients, not-for-profit a little bit, consumer packaged goods, beverage alcohol, telco, etc. And when an opportunity came up at Sick Kids and they were looking to do a brand transformation, I thought this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for an incredible brand and incredible institution. So I made the move. Didn't imagine that the last 10 years would be the incredible journey that it's been, but I feel really just privileged to have joined the team, and the work that we get to do is really special.
So let's explore that for a minute, yeah? and just talk about that challenge that was laid before you. And, if you could just frame that for the folks that are here, that'd be helpful.
So I'll take folks back to 2014. The foundation had its most successful fundraising year in its history. We had released a campaign to the market called Better Tomorrows that had won a bunch of creative awards and earned some media attention, which is so amazing for a charity to get earned media attention. It's like free media, you want that. And then the CEO came to the organization and said, well, I have some news. Despite this incredible year we've had, we have a pretty daunting task. The hospital itself needs to redevelop its campus. The main building on University Avenue was built in 1949. Incredible at the time, but obviously medicine has changed. The role of technology in medicine is huge. The building was just not suitable anymore, and it was actually holding the hospital back from progressing and doing the kind of work it needed to do. Obviously, in Ontario, the government's going to contribute majority of funds towards building a new hospital, but every foundation has what's called a local share. And so we braced ourselves, and they told us our local share that we had to fundraise to enable this project to get off the ground and build a new sick kids hospital was $1.5 billion. And so when we picked ourselves up off the floor with that amount of money, I think at that time we were raising approximately $145 million a year. We said, okay, well, that's pretty transformational. When we looked at how much money we'd been raising, and even though we were going up, it was incremental. So we were like, this is transformational growth for us. Incremental growth is not going to cut it. So in order to drive that transformational revenue growth, we knew we needed to do something transformational. And as the keepers of the brand at the foundation, obviously the hospital's the owner of the brand and the reputation, but we're the ones that take that brand and market it for the purposes of raising money. We were like, we need to take that one main asset, which is our brand, and do something radically different, because we can't lose our core donor, but we have to open it up to bring in more men, younger donors, fill the pipeline. And so that was the origin story of knowing that even though we had this great brand that was doing really well and raising good money, we had to do something different.
Okay, so let's just, before we dive into that, so highly successful. I mean, 145 million as a fundraising, yeah? I mean, steady growth around that. Given a challenge that says you need 10x, yeah? I mean, not a small lift, yeah?
Correct.
I mean, not 1 or 2%, 10x, yeah, around it. And I share that because a number of you are sitting there in organizations where I'm sure there's a vision that's getting painted out there, yeah? We're going to change the city, we're going to change the healthcare, we're going to change this. And I just encourage you to not get lost in the numbers here, but let's think about what is it that we can take away individually around this. And so, when you started to define, you've got a brand that's really powerful. You said, it works for a whole series of established donors, but you can't continue to do what you've always done. So what did you do?
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that we couldn't possibly expect to grow transformationally in revenue by telling the same group of donors what they already knew about sick kids, and tell it in the same way. So we recognized we needed a different side of our story to tell. But we knew that story had to be authentic. We didn't want to create something. So when we looked inside the organization, we recognized this really interesting sort of conflict. Us at the foundation were talking about sick kids as a charity, and we were behaving in the way all the other charities were, which is, let me position us as weak, we need help, create pity. These were the tropes of the category that would get people to open their wallets and make a donation. But then when you're actually in the hospital and you see the work that's being done there, that these folks are waking up every morning, coming there to do nothing but fight for the well-being of our kids, and best in the world doctors, incredible research breakthroughs, top of their game. So they were sort of the performance brand of the hospital category. They are the number one publicly funded children's hospital in the world, number 2 children's hospital full stop by Newsweek magazine, but we certainly weren't talking like a performance brand, we were talking like a charity. So we're like, let's lean into that thing that we own, that side of our story we've never told before. So we didn't make it up, it's authentic to who we are, but we'd actually been so wrapped up in talking about ourselves in the way the whole category did that we were missing this really unique proposition about ourselves. So that's what unlocked everything for us. It created this whole strategic shift from charity brand to performance brand, from some place that was like struggling to keep up to, hey, this is a team that's winning. Don't you guys want to be part of a winning team? If you join us as a donor, you are part of that team. And it was that strategic shift that, again, as I said, unlocked everything for us and then started to inform our creative, our behavior, our donor experience, everything.
But it's interesting, Kate, as you talk, because it sounds to me as though that was insight that you already had. I mean, you had the physicians, you had the nurses, you had the children that were beating these diseases. Yeah? Mm-hmm. All of that insight, all of that data was there. You just you weren't using it to connect it to the brand around it.
Correct.
And I'm sure lots of folks in the audience are sitting there with rich insights, yeah, that possibly, I would say probably, I might even say definitely aren't being used, yeah, in that way. So that's a really good source of where to go and look around it.
And what's also really important to take away is that it made socializing this new disruptive and bold strategy to very conservative stakeholders a lot easier, because we were playing back something about them that was true, that they were incredibly proud of. It was a lot easier to get people on board when I said, we're finally going to shine a spotlight on a part of our story we haven't told before, things we should be incredibly proud of, and we're going to celebrate that, rather than focusing purely on kids who are struggling, the tropes of the category. And so it was the socialization of the strategy that first, with all of the stakeholders, and building this army of support on the strategy before we put pen to paper on what it looked like creatively, before we pushed on really bold work.
So can we stay with that just for a minute, Kate? Because I'm absolutely sure that it's not as simple as we'll share the insights and everyone will have that eureka moment and we'll just get after this. Yeah? I'm sure there were people who sit there cross-armed and all sorts of different behaviors around it. So talk a little bit more about actually how you got people alongside.
Sure. Yeah, we took a year, so we planned for this. Again, we knew we needed to tell the world that we had to build a new hospital and that there was a huge price tag attached to that, and we needed our community to come together. We wanted to back up from that and transform the brand in order to get people sitting up and paying attention so that they were ready and primed when we delivered that news, and that they were sort of renewed sense of commitment and almost fans of our organization before we told them that news. And then a year before that was when we landed on this strategy, and that's when we started the very, very careful and strategic socialization. Our creative director at our agency made a joke about keeping a blazer on the back of his door so that if he got called for a board meeting, he could throw the blazer on and come and sort of present the thinking to whatever group of stakeholders it was. But we essentially put it together as a story, explained the situation, explained how this new fundraising goal was going to require transformational growth, but got them all nodding their heads to the argument that you can't expect radical change by continuing to do the same thing with the same audience. And then when we started to talk about the story and how that might come to life, we actually also built a bit of what we called a rip film, which was just something put together with existing footage. And it was almost bolder than where we wanted to go so that we could get them comfortable, and we gave them time to sit with that. And we did qualitative research with donors, with patient families, even with the patients themselves. They have a patient council at SickKids. It's a group of kids. We brought the work to them and made sure they could see it. So that year-long socialization, very carefully, one by one, it started to build the army. And so that even people who are like, you know what, I'm not a fan of this work, but that's okay because it's not for me. It's for a different purpose, and I'm going to get on board with it even though I'm personally not a fan or personally not, it wouldn't be my choice.
So it's an interesting piece, isn't it, that you create that emotional connection. Yeah? I mean, because not once have you talked about asking people for money in this. Yeah? I mean, we're talking about a story, we're talking about a vision, we're talking about a brand, we're talking about the insights that we have around that. So, I mean, I'm intrigued at what you just said at the end there, you know, that some people are, yep, fully supportive, and others are, it's okay, yeah, we get on with this. But, you know, the brand is what the brand does, okay? So if you're changing the positioning of the brand, how does everyone at Sick Kids then understand what their role is in it and what it means for them?
Well, the powerful emotional stories really at the foundation are the product we make. So it's the thing that is making that emotional connection. They're not buying a product or service when you make a gift. You're inspired to make a gift through storytelling, and then as a way of thank you, you maybe get a different story served to you about the impact of your gift. So it was really important for us that we pulled this sort of new positioning right through the line. It wasn't just about the advertising designed to acquire donors, it also changed how we developed all of our impact stories, all of our brand assets. And one of the tests we had with the Versus platform was, how can we put our donors at the center of it? And that's how we also knew we had an idea that was really powerful, is that a donor could be against something. So it wasn't just Sick Kids versus cancer. Let's say TD is a partner of ours. It could be TD versus cancer. They can adopt the platform and apply it to themselves. So there was a lot of power in that. And again, once we were able to start showing the malleability, how the idea isn't just an advertising or film idea, it's actually a platform that informs everything we do, and that's rooted in an authentic truth about the hospital, which is it's Sick Kids versus the greatest challenges in child health every single day.
And just to stay with that, because, you know, one of the things you talked about was the need to appeal to a different and a broader audience base, a donor, yeah? And changing the experience that those folks had with Sick Kids. So talk to us a little bit about that, yeah? How you go about changing that donor experience.
We recognized that we had a lot of what we called our sweet spot donor, which was women 45 years of age or older. They would have children in their lives. That was kind of our core demographic. But believe it or not, ladies, men donate more. So we definitely needed some more men, and we definitely needed more youth. We needed to start filling the pipeline with younger donors. And so a big part of us, you know, again, testing the platform and understanding the value of it was recognizing how it was going to appeal. And so again, it wasn't just about the film work that would sort of start the conversation or the really cool ad that they might see that starts the conversation. It's, again, how we're navigating our website. Our website got a complete overhaul. Our donation flow got a complete overhaul to make it as frictionless as possible, to pull that sort of fight language through at every touch point. What that unlocked, and it wasn't just for the mass donor as well. We also, you know, overhauled all of our impact reporting. Every single piece of communication was updated to reflect this new platform and leverage the imagery, the language. And so we were truly one voice, regardless of what point in a journey any donor was interacting with us.
Well, that's a fascinating piece, isn't it? That when you step into that space, and I think whether I'm a donor or a patient or a citizen, what I look for in that experience is I look for consistency across that experience. So, the way you described it was, we brought the brand to life at every moment that matters across that donor's journey. And I just wonder how many of us are sitting there thinking about the journeys that our citizens, our customers, our patients, our donors go through, and are we deliberately designing in the brand? Because when you do that, not only does the brand come to life, but I'm sure the value starts to flow. And maybe just talk to us a little bit about how you start to measure success.
So one of the biggest measures of success for us beyond acquisition was actually driving our retention numbers down, or our attrition numbers down. For us, monthly donors are very, very valuable. So these are individuals who are making a commitment to give every month. That's recurring revenue that the organization can depend on, and it's what funds a lot of the core commitments that we have to the hospital, some of that sort of foundational work. But you know, it's a big commitment to ask someone to be a monthly donor. So once they've signed on, the next few months are really critically important. So again, are we following through on what we promised in terms of their feeling of impact, in terms of them feeling like they are in fact part of that winning team? And so we were able to bring our attrition rates down from somewhere in the 26-25% down to 13% over the last few years. So that's been a huge measure, because that is what is driving our monthly donor revenue growth, not just in acquiring new, but retaining those. And it also demonstrates that it's not just that you were moved by one ad in one moment and you signed up, but actually we're now developing a relationship with you. Because again, you're not getting anything but that content and that journey from us in exchange. So that journey has to be special.
And I mean, so we're halving our attrition rate, yeah? Mm-hmm. From 26, I think you said, down to 13. Down to 13, yeah? I mean, that's a significant value associated with that. I can monetize that, yeah? Mm-hmm. I can look at the income from, you talked about appealing to a broader base. So, I mean, I guess there's some segmentation around that. And
yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we have surprisingly little data about who our donors are. So that's one thing that continues to be a challenge for us. What data you have to provide to us when you sign on as a donor is relatively limited. We're continuing to work on how we can find out why you became a donor, because I think what's probably most important for us is, if you care about cancer, we want to give you a journey where we're sharing with you about breakthroughs in cancer and cancer research, or if you care about faster times in the ER and kids not having to wait, or you care about left toe disease, whatever it might be. So we're still working on how we don't just bring the brand to life. We understand what your versus is as a donor, so that then we can personalize that content and that journey for you, because again, that is going to be the thing that keeps you feeling like part of our family.
I love that, because we've talked a lot over the last day and a half around empathy and personalization, and here's another example of actually seeing your donors as individuals. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if they're corporates, yeah, but treating them all individually and finding those relevant connects in the way that the brand can be connected. It can be brought to life authentically, and it can be in a way that is meaningful for them. Yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, around it. So we're going to get into questions in just a minute or two, but I guess, you know, I look at the video shared, the numbers, you know, 1.5 you went out for, you got 1.7, yeah? You changed the donor base, yeah, around it. I guess with, you know, success comes even greater expectation, Kate, yeah? So, I mean, I could just imagine, so, you know, what's next?
Well, you know, one thing we've observed is a lot of others in the charity sector have recognized the value of investing in brand. And again, you don't have to have the budgets to invest in brand at the level we have, even at a much smaller scale, recognizing that as a charity, or any not-for-profit actually, that, you know, what is your mission? Why do you exist? And are you telling stories about that? To drive meaning with your constituents. So that's been a great thing, because ideally, SickKids doesn't want to win by taking money from other worthy charities. We'd like to grow the pie. We'd like to encourage more people to give. There's more than enough money to go around. But we did also feel like we had a lot of competitors in the space. Some other charities, even other children's hospitals, that were mimicking the positioning of SickKids and sort of taking it for their own, and or, you know, if they weren't mimicking the creative, they were at very best mimicking our strategies and tactics as it came to media buy and our full funnel approach and things like that. So great. for the sector, but a bit more competition for us. But one of the things we've really just landed on very recently, because we had a little wobble there where we're like, oh, everybody's zagging now, so we need to zig to pull ourselves away from the category again and make sure that we stand out. But the risk there is that we've let other people knock us off of our platform, and we can't do that. We have to actually double down on the thing, that story that we're telling that is authentic to us, and continue to invest in that, and sort of worry a little bit less about what the competition is doing, and actually continue to make sure that we're telling an authentic story for ourselves. And as long as we do that, I think we'll continue to see success.
Great. Okay, I'm sure we've inspired, excited, provoked some thoughts, from folks. So maybe we can, any questions, any reflections that people have? Okay, we'll start over here, please.
Thanks for that. I'm curious, how did you personalize the journey for a big corporation? So you can, have that, I am against cancer, so I will connect you with this story. What about a big sponsor or donor?
Again, we thought that was one of the beauties of the platform, was the ability to sort of allow our corporate partners to take it where it makes sense. So if they had a giving level of a certain amount, there were benefits that they got that came with that. Included in that were a custom battle statement. So they were able to, I'll pick on TD because I'm looking at Elizabeth and used to work there. TD versus diabetes, or Sun Life as an organization has always been focused on diabetes. That's a CSR priority for them. Sun Life versus diabetes. And again, at a certain giving level, we would collaborate with that partner to create custom content, finding a unique patient story. We would tell that story, we would include their brand in it, we would work together with a joint press release around their gift, around that content story. We'd have patients come to their place of work and present to the employees. We don't get the data from employees to come to SickKids, so we can't control the journey, but what we do often is work with platforms like Benevity that actually handle that, and it's about providing them with custom content that they can then distribute, either the employer themselves or the platform. I hope that answers the question.
But it's interesting, because, at the end of the day, yes, large brands, but large brands comprise individual people. Yeah, so, it's about the relationships that you've got there. It's about, are people seeing themselves in that brand? Is there a connectivity that's there?
And it's often even asking the organization to reach out for employees that are connected to that cause or mission, because sometimes it takes having employees within the organization that are personally touched by whatever that cause or issue is, that are ready to share their story. And it's incredible the power that has to galvanize other employees to sort of get on board and support.
Okay. Yes, we've got a question at the back.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great talk. I was just curious when you mentioned you overhauled all the communication of all the touch points because you were rebranding. Just curious that's obviously a humongous undertaking. Curious about the timeline, the amount of time it took, and also the strategies that you use to avoid getting lost in the weeds of solving an issue.
Great question. So remember how I mentioned it took a year to socialize the strategy, to sort of make sure we had that on board before we started the creative. It was another year to develop the creative and then roll it out so that we could actually press a button on a single day and have everything roll over. So it was no small feat. Again, we took a year, produced a lot of the assets, content, visual identity, guidelines first. Then once we had that, we tested it against all of the different assets, and we gave ourselves lots of room to discover that, hey, there's this one element of the brand we haven't quite figured out yet because we've got to apply it to these types of communication pieces. So again, time was our friend, because to be honest with you, it was more time than money. It wasn't expense. Once you land on the brand and the assets, it's amazing how efficient you can be about how you leverage them if you give yourself the time to think it through. And the second part of your question was, remind me?
Just how you
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that well because I think I was pretty in the weeds. I think actually what I would say is that the devil is in the details with that. So when it comes to that kind of brand transformation, I think if you go into it building your team so that you do actually have the right people going into the weeds at the right time. And we'll often do an audit too, partway through a process or after a process. We get in a room, we put everything on the wall and we look at it, and that's when you see it collectively that some of the things that aren't quite jiving start to come out. So that's a practice we have during the process, and it's a practice we do ongoing.
So just one thing if I can add, I mean, I think absolutely if you've got a large-scale brand, then you're going to have all the visual identity and assets and everything, yeah, to push that big button on day one. But I'm sure there's also a set of communications that you frankly missed, and you're just adaptive and you keep changing, yeah, as you go through it. Yeah, so it's about being responsive. It's not waiting, yeah, for everything to be in place before you take action.
It's a really good point. Yeah, there's always things we hadn't thought of, and then there's new tools that are coming up after the fact.
So better to act, yeah, and take some and move forward.
Which has been the theme of the whole session, about kind of taking small wins and growing on them and learning from them and iterating on them. I think, we'll take one more because we need to move on to the next segment. I think it's your colleague from TD.
Thanks. Yeah, Kate, you used a great phrase around performance brand. So I think of other global brands, whether it's Nike or Apple, Adidas, pick your favorite brand, and you were able to elevate Sick Kids to that stratosphere. And I wonder, as you think about the year of stakeholder engagement, tell us a little bit about how people reacted to that, your stakeholders who were very strongly aligned with Sick Kids, perhaps as the not-for-profit brand, and yet you are transforming it into a global powerhouse. How did that look and feel within your organization?
Well, again, I think we looked outside. It allowed us to look outside of the sector completely and look at some of the things that just as humans, regardless of what sector, there's a reason why Nike or Under Armour or these performance brands, they're great storytellers. They develop a visceral reaction when they put something in front of you. And so we were sort of stealing with pride some of the tricks and tips and tools that performance brands, that's very sort of expected for that category, but all of a sudden you bring them into our category and it feels incredibly fresh and different. So this is another great piece of advice for anyone, regardless of what sector you're in, is kind of look way outside your category. Almost think, what is the most opposite thing of what I do? Because if I think of a performance brand and then I think of a children's hospital, you don't necessarily think they're that close together. But when you start to adopt something from something that feels like it's the opposite and you bring it to life in your space, it feels very fresh, very new. And if it's rooted in something authentic, you're going to be able to pull it off credibly.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Kate, so much. Everybody, if you give her a round of applause. Thank you, Kate.